Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Smoky Dude, and I am here today with AJP from the world of AJP. Which, holy crap, you have
Yep.
short hair.
Yep. Yes, I do. I cut it all off. It's all farewell to the spirit inside of me right now.
Fair enough. Today we are discussing Cormac McCarthy, and we are discussing Cormac McCarthy's Suttree. So there you go. This is the copy I got right here. Apparently, you were just rereading it yesterday.
Yep, I've managed to finish all of it on time, and it's still one of the best books I've ever read. Period from McCarthy, and I definitely consider it like probably one of the best bits of Americana literature, right alongside like Blood Meridian, because it's just an absolute addiction and everything like that.
But you accidentally kick yourself out of the conversation.
What's that?
Did you kick yourself out of the conversation?
No, that's weird. Is it paused?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Anyway, what were you
Oh,
saying?
basically, I was saying is that Suttree is a masterpiece. That's basically what I was saying. It's one of the best pieces of American literature, like period. It's just a simulacrum of just fucking. What is going on? Why is it pausing like that? but pretty much yeah. It's a masterpiece of a book. That's what I'm saying at this point before I get cut off.
The spirit of Cormac is interfering with our show today. But yeah, I read Suttree. I was this was one of those books I was kind of intimidated by, to be honest with you. Even though I've read Cormac McCarthy and I read Blood Meridian, I'm like, you know what, Blood Meridian, it can't be, it can't be too bad. I read Blood Meridian, it should be too bad.
Legit, why the intimidation? I feel like people get weirdly intimidated by this book or by the passenger and Stella Maris like the most. Like with those two, I get because of the physics and all that stuff. But why the intimidation with Suttree exactly?
I don't know. I mean, it was kind of long, and I heard it doesn't really have much of a plot. It's just kind of a vibe book. Yeah, it's there's a lot. It's a lot of it. Just a bunch of guys hanging out and getting drunk and getting into weird shenanigans. I
Yeah, it's
remember reading
very.
this book and I was wondering how did Cormac come up with this? Did he experience? Because I heard this was semi autobiographical.
It is. It is semi autobiographical. A lot of it is based off of a lot of like his time after he basically abandoned his first family and started really going around like a vagabond, going around pretty much, doing all this stuff basically, like just partying, just sort of, being kind of a bum basically. And a lot of the book I feel like is definitely like personal within like that whole regard, in being sort of a discussion about growing up, changing, maturing, but being still like sort of a societal outcast. And you can feel that with McCarthy a bit, that alienation, but that ability to identify with the other people who are so like xeno towards the rest of society essentially. And that's what really the book is about. It's about growing up, it's about maturing, but also having your own sense of independence and your own sense of value to yourself in life. Basically, it's very if you ever read James Joyce, it reminds me of a mix of The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man.
I was about to say I've only
And
read a Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man from him.
yeah, it's kind of like that, where it's like that, and as well as Ulysses and Dubliners, and that it's very much focused on like sort of like a non-oriented structure, but has a grand motif about existentialism, about growing up, about your maturity, about your development of change, and everything like that. It's about the growth as an artist, and like sort of the life experiences that define really his sort of tone and how he would write and structure books. That sort of irreverence, if that makes any sense, to this regard, basically.
Yeah, I mean, when I read this, I thought it was kind of a piss take. It's something kind of like Mark Twain. It's kind of a piss take on Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. Suttree is kind of the Huckleberry Finn, and then Harrowgate's just the Tom Sawyer, except he's dumb as a bag of hammers. To quote, "Oh brother, where art thou?"
Yeah, and it is very Mark Twainish too. This book is like that's the reason why I said it's like one of the best of Americana, and that's why it's a Samuel Carum, is because it's a combination of so much American literature and also foreign literature, and it's very Irish. if you don't know what an Irish story is, basically it's very Beckettian in its influence. Basically, it's just rambling nonsense, sort of, and it's just nothing really happens, but like a whole bunch of stuff also happens in the same breath. It's like, you know, like you have that one drunken friend that kind of just says a whole bunch of shit in a single sentence, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. He goes to like from topic to topic to topic to topic to topic, and it's just like complete nonsense, but it makes sense to you somehow.
Mm-hmm.
That's Suttree.
Yeah, I remember my first kind of impression when I was reading this. I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? Aside from trying to like set the scene and stuff like that. But yeah, I would call this kind of a vibe novel, if that makes sense. It's just kind of like weird, you know, not really a plot. It's more about this guy just going through his life. It's kind of like, you know, I actually was just watching this. It kind of reminds me of Train Spotting, except
It is very similar to Train Spotting. Actually, with Train Spotting, that that was influenced by Dubliners by James Joyce, actually too. So that's another like this is that evolution of literature and everything. It's very like short story and just kind of like, you know, here's this bunch of outcasts and dumbasses like coming together and just being a bunch of idiots together. You know, you have the technical rape scene going on, that whole motif. This it's very sexual, very like, you know, grungy, dirty, filth style, but that's kind of the beauty of it. It's focused on that more out there societal thing, and yeah, it is very character focused compared to other McCarthy books. This one has probably the most like internal monologue you're going to get from a McCarthy book outside of you know, like actual monologues from like certain characters in Stella Maris. This book is very much
or
sort of
No
focused.
Country.
Yeah, and No Country too. No Country as well. It's very much centered around Suttree. That's why it's named after him. And similar to like Child of God, it's very much centered around the human orientation rather than say like an epicness, or you know, like how with the Border trilogy, it's more focused on the grand American epic and stuff like that, and it's kind of more different in tone and stuff like that. That's what you notice with the theme and the motifs, you know.
You know, it's funny. I'm actually reading The Crossing right now. yeah, yeah, it's much denser than All the Pretty Horses. I'm like, oh my god.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. All the Pretty Horses was originally written as a screenplay, and then it got changed and reworked into a book. And then The Crossing was completely a book on its own. And then City of Up on the Plane was another screenplay that he tried doing that he rewrote into a book. And you really do notice the difference between, you know, when he's working on something that was a screenplay, like with No Country, Whales and Men, All the Pretty Horses, Cities on the Plane. The prose is just so much more simple. And then you get something like The Crossing, where it's like, or like Suttree, which just has this intense, vibrant prose that's just, oh, like euphorically, orgasmically amazing prose. Like just so beautifully detailed. Like that opening 3 pages of Suttree is some of the best I ever read. Period. It's just orgasmic. It's just beautiful, beautiful writing. It's Valkyrian and it's masterly, really.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I said this before, or I think I wrote this before, but if I think Blood Meridian is Cormac McCarthy's achievement in like literature, but as far as a prose stylist, I mean, I think Suttree might be his best
Oh yeah.
work as a prose stylist. I mean, you know, I could be wrong. There might be some people who are like, man, Blood Meridian, or meh, you know, something else. I don't know.
Well, yeah, Blood Meridian has like fantastic writing in every regard. You know, it's
Maybe The
very
Crossing,
much.
because Crossing also has really great writing in it
Oh
too.
yeah, absolutely. But it's like comparing the Odyssey with the Iliad. You know, the Iliad and the Odyssey have completely different intentions, and Blood Meridian, I feel like, was more focused on being like a grand epic poem rather than like say like it was more poetry than it was prose. If that makes any sense, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so like poetic waxing and waning, and that's beautiful. But the prose and the syntax is completely separate from what Suttree has. You know, Suttree has such clear interweaving of imagery, of symbolism, of stream of consciousness, of just various shifting and POVs that are just utterly seamless. Um, it's very just beautiful it's some of the most beautiful prose that McCarthy ever put to pen, and it's hard to compare really, like compared to his other books. It stands as a titan of writing personally for me. And I think it's just an objective thing where Suttree is like the best prose wise from McCarthy outside of like maybe again Blood Meridian, and that's still like different intentions. One's poetry and one's prose. It's different line from there.
Yeah, I mean, like Blood Meridian just kind of. How do I put this without seeming dramatic? Fuck it, I'll go for it. It's kind of like I read the book and then it just kind of knocked me over, and I just was in a coma for 3 days after I read Blood Meridian. Suttree is more like it's more relaxed. I think there's this very leisurely pace. Like Suttree will like hang out, see some guy jerking off, head back to his little boat. His uncle might visit him once in a while. He might get plastered drunk. Then he'll hang out with one of his friends, and then that's it. That's a day in the life.
That's pretty much it. It's just horny motherfucker goes around and has the time of his life, and
also he'll hang out with Harrogate, and Harrogate will tell him about his next crazy ass scheme.
Yeah,
he's got cooked up.
Viciously kill a pig for like no reason, and pay only like 25 cents for it. It's just this book. I think that let's cut out like all the dramatics and stuff like that. This book is hilarious.
Oh my god, yeah.
It is so fucking funny. It is like McCarthy has a very dark sense of humor. I will say he has like very much like you don't really notice it in Blood Meridian because like that book is so like dry and serious most of the time. But with Suttree, this book is just like you see his humor out in like the full fucking blast. It's just like so grotesque and so like juvenile. I think the closest to this was like the Child of God scene where like it was like a giant incest joke, and it was some of the funniest shit I've ever seen. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, my favorite is probably Harrogate and his wacky shenanigans, such as the one time the Melon Munter incident. For one thing, I always love the quote, "Somebody's been fucking my watermelons." And the dude's like, "What?" And it's like, it's this whole conversation. He's like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm sure someone's been banging my watermelons."
Someone's fucking my watermelons, gee lord. And it's just like, does that count as bestiality? I'm not sure about that. Like the fact they tried like actually like getting him on that, it was like fucking
and then he grabs a gun and shoots him when he shows up again. Like, oh my god. Calm down. And then they send him to jail.
And that's like the best part about this book. It doesn't stop. Whenever like right after that, like they go in the car and everything like that, and like, well, it's fucking freezing out here. Let's just light a fire in the back of the car. And just like, and he's just driving, and they're just like, "What the fuck are y'all doing back there?" They're just like, "We're the fire," and I'm just like, "What is wrong?"
Yeah, so
and they just all jump out. It's like, "You are goddamn one of the most retarded motherfuckers I've ever met." Like, and it's just like.
Oh yeah, I should note, this is not a book for the easily offended. There is animal cruelty. Animal cruel. Well, yeah, he kills a pig, so I guess that counts.
Dude,
there's racism in this, which it's Deep South. What do you want me to say?
One of the main characters is literally named the N-word and Jim.
Like, N-word Jim. Just like which has to be a reference to Huckleberry Finn. It has to be.
It is a reference, and it's a glorious. It's just such a like this book. I can't ever see it be made into a movie like ever.
Maybe if the Coen brothers did it, I could see it, but yeah, I don't see this being a movie.
No, and especially nowadays, the humor is like so. That I think that is just it's such a like vibes book. Like it's so intertwined with the prose. Like I can't ever really see it changing or like being into like a different medium like this.
Mm-hmm. Maybe like a maybe like a mini series or something. I don't know. Maybe
Oh yeah,
not.
maybe like that. Maybe have like a real, really behind it all. And I think you could really like capture that sort of like, slow moving, very methodical, very like beauty centered novel,
Well,
But
unless
one of
you're
a kind.
unless you're David Foster Wallace, he thought it could make a good movie, but he's
Oh
David
yeah,
Foster Wallace. He
David
can
Foster Wallace.
he can go away. But
Yeah.
no, I'm kidding. But
You're
yeah,
an
I
American.
think it was kind of weird because I wasn't sure what to make of Suttree when I read it, but I liked most of it. I thought it was really good. I don't know where it is in my kind of ranking of Cormac McCarthy, but I would say that this kind of feels like his goodbye to the South, his goodbye to the Southern Gothic genre. Because like right after this, he does Blood Meridian, which
Oh yeah, that's like the major deconstruction of Southern and Texan and Westerns and everything like that. And that's complete. Not even then. It's a dismantling of a lot of ideas in terms of like centralized universes and everything like that. It's a very very grand epic book. The irreverence, basically. It's the if I had to say, it's like a divine comedy before the actual like dark and grim of like say an Iliad or something like that. That doesn't make any sense. The Dante's Inferno came after, but basically what I'm trying to say is that it's the irreverent act before you get to like the very dark and grim aspects of like the rest of his argument there, pretty much,
Yeah, I mean, I already knew Cormac could be pretty hilarious because I read All the Pretty Horses, and there's some really funny stuff in that book. But man, Suttree is hilarious. I have to say.
It's amazingly funny, and it's one of the reasons why I think this book is more accessible for people in terms of like if you want to get into like postmodernist literature and everything like that. I think this is a good starting get way to actually like start understanding how that works and everything like that because besides the comedy and everything like that, it's very human and it's something I think a lot of people can identify with. Being kind of that early 20s, kind of don't know what you want to do with your life, and you're just kind of going around with a bunch of idiots you barely know, and you're just living what you can. And that's kind of the theme, the universal theme about this book. It's existentialist, and it's about really like trying to find your own place in the world when you feel like you don't really belong in it. You don't really feel like you're a part of the whole. You're a part of some other individual sum to your existence, and that's something I think a lot of people can identify with. And I think that's why this book is really also beautiful. Really, it's like there's beauty beyond all the grotesqueness of life. There's like he's managed to make like the grimy, dingy, disgusting South part, like all the incest and all that type of stuff, seem kind of utterly like beautifully written. Because I think that's supposed to be the contrast there. Like you have such a grotesque world, but you can see the beauty and the fun in it, basically.
Yeah, like there's this one moment where Sut finds like a dead baby. I think if I remember right, he finds a dead baby in the water, and you're like, "What the fuck?" And then they never bring it up again.
Yeah, it should. That's just like it just seems like that's like the type of shit where it's just like you just see a lot of stuff when you're just kind
And
of
Sut isn't
running.
even phased. He's just like, "What the fuck?" And he just like goes on with
Yeah,
his business. You're like, "What the fuck was that?"
yeah, and you get like like there's a lot of dark shit in his book. Like Sut gets raped by a woman and everything like that, an older, gross woman and all that type of
Wait, he
shit.
does?
Yeah, he does. He gets drugged and drunk, and he gets raped one by an older black woman in the book.
Oh, I forgot about that. Shit, man.
Thing that does happen, and yeah, it's like there's a lot of stuff that just happens in the book that's dark and grim, but it's kind of like it's like how I just say like in the most random shit, like oh yeah, I saw someone get shot where I was staying at my homeless shelter, and it's just something that happens, when you're so used to like sort of like this type of like fucked up weird environment, you kind of don't really process that shit. And that's kind of like why like when I was homeless, and I'm still homeless, but with my homelessness because it's kind of it. I related to it so much. Being this bum who has no idea what he wants to do in life, kind of going around being a dumbass, fighting, getting drunk, fucking around with my friends, that type of shit. And it's a beautifully human book, and it's a beautiful sort of like I guess like celebration of McCarthy's like early days One, he was a bum. One, he was sort of a loser a little bit before he really got his life together. And this book also was kind of like a financial failure too. It wasn't like Blood Meridian and Suttree, they were like big gang sellers or anything like that. They sold a couple thousand copies at best until all the pretty horses came around, and then that's when he popped off. But other than that, like he was still kind of a bum, for a good amount of his life until he started
Yeah,
working. Yeah.
I can see how this gallows humor would appeal to you. I remember we were having a conversation the other day, and you were telling me all this like deep stuff, and I'm like, man, word, and you're like, but the sex though was fucking great. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? I'm like, what the fuck, dude? It just came out of nowhere. So yeah, I can definitely, because this book is very much like that. I'm like, yeah, I can see how this book appeals to you a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
And that's what I mean. It's I relate to it. It's like you get all these types of like fucked up shit happening to you, and you got to see the silver lining a little bit. You just got to be able to say, yeah, I'm not that well off from this, and it's kind of fucked up, and I'm probably going to be traumatized for the rest of my life. But it was really worth getting fucking having all that sex and just getting blackout fucking drunk. Woo, buddy! I was worth it beyond belief. That type of shit.
You were mentioning earlier about like postmodern. Like, would you call Cormac McCarthy a postmodernist? Because I don't know, he seems more like kind of carrying on that sort of American literature.
Well, usually with postmodernism and modernism, sort of transitionary shifts, we tend to view people within the Faulknerian post-narrative era to be sort of basically the postmodernist transition. But the Orchard Keeper, yeah, it's Southern Gothic oriented, but you can really see that Faulknerian, deconstruction of values and stuff like that, the deconstruction of the culture of the South, about a lot of sin of mankind, a lot of there's that Southern Gothic, but it was a transitionary postmodernist work, and I think it goes for a lot of Cormac McCarthy's works. A lot of them, they're Southern Gothic oriented and stuff like that, but they're very much deconstructions of cultural values, shifts, norms, and they also play around with prose and syntax and the rules of writing a lot. And yeah, that's from stuff like the Odyssey where there's no quotation marks or anything like that, but it's messing with the rules of writing itself. You're not using any quotation marks, you're removing commas and stuff like that. It's a very original deconstruction of westerns, of the South, of Southern Gothic itself, and it evolves and it changes and shifts. And it's very experimental as well, and that's really why he gets defined as postmodernist. And Suttree is the peak of that for me, besides The Passenger and Stella Maris, because he plays around with grammatical person and shifting and stuff like that. He'll go from third person to first person sometimes in some paragraphs. He'll write sonnets and stuff. It's very much like Ulysses. It's a prose poem essentially for most of Suttree, and it's beautiful. It's just majestically written in every regard.
I like how you just have a copy of the Odyssey on you. Fucking copy of the Odyssey.
Hey man, you need inspiration when you're out alone by yourself. You gotta get that inspiration. You gotta be like Odysseus. You gotta be like Ulysses himself. You gotta traverse the wilds. You gotta break free of the lamentations of the women.
Yeah, no, man, I need to read the Odyssey again. But no, it's just kind of funny because I don't know. I guess I never really thought of him like a postmodernist, like someone like a Thomas Pynchon or
Wallace.
or oh god, who else is a postmodernist? Alan Moore is a
Uh,
postmodernist to some levels.
he is. Oh yeah, definitely he is. Jerusalem is the most postmodernist novel I think I've read outside of Mark C. Danielowski or Falconer with the Sound of Fury.
Oh,
Or
what else is postmodern? I can't think of it at the Pynchon's the first one that comes to my mind. I've only read one of his books. Pynchon, or however you pronounce his name. He's a recluse. I'm sure he'll be fine. Yeah, I'm sure.
Paikin is the cooler sounding name. Okay, Paichen is not at all. It sounds like a type of pie. All right, and I don't want to call him the best author ever. A pie. I want to call him by the cool sci-fi name. All right, Paikin forever. I don't care if it's wrong, Thomas Paikin. All right, I don't care. It's gonna be piking for the rest of my life
I
till I
don't know.
die.
It's but going back to McCarthy, it's kind of weird because like he's kind of because again he's kind of like a classic American novelist, but he also has like this surreal mysticism in his work. I mean, the other day you were on Ian Right Consciousness's channel talking about alchemy. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But whatever. Like, okay.
Oh god, I got so much more hate than I wanted to from that discussion there. I also got a lot of subscribers because I rambled about alchemy and shit. But yes,
Is there alchemy in Suttree?
alchemy and such. No, not really. Not too much. There's more of an existentialism element. It's like an Albert Camus
I would
novel.
agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
definitely
lot
feels
more.
aimless. There's this, or it felt the kind of theme is like trying to find meaning
Yeah,
in things
it's
that
the
are meaningless in some
yeah.
ways, kind of existential. It's funny you mentioned Camus. It kind of reminded me of The Stranger a little bit. He's just kind of
Oh yeah.
walking around and doesn't really know what he's doing, but it's more funny than The Stranger. The Stranger's just
Oh
kind
yeah.
of I want to take a nap and like cry after reading after reading The Stranger.
Yeah,
God, that book is messed up.
that's where Camus, like he's a better, I think, nonfiction and philosophical writer than he is like an actual writer, if that makes sense. Because Myth of Sisyphus is absolutely fantastic work, but when I read his actual works, I want to kill myself because they're so fucking boring most of the fucking time.
I don't know. I
Like,
like The Stranger though. I don't know why. I think maybe it's because I read it when I was like 14 and I thought it was great. But like it was like I was like yeah yeah
it,
yeah.
it,
I was like
it was too short for my taste. I prefer The Fall. The Fall, I feel like, is a lot better compared to The Stranger.
I'll have to read The
But for
Fall.
The Fall is so fucking good, and
I also read The Myth of Sisyphus, which is really
yeah,
good.
oh yeah, the Myth of Sisyphus is a fantastic philosophical work, and it's the one with the ethics I agree the most with, and I feel like that's kind of the main inspiration for Suttree. And if I remember correctly, Camus, he was one of like the big inspirations for Suttree, specifically in terms of like philosophy and stuff. But don't quote me on that. I'm just guessing there.
It's
But
kind of hilarious you said that about the Stranger. I think of Nausea the same way. I fucking hate that book. I think it's fucking
yeah,
so fucking boring. Oh my god. That was
nausea is
painful. That's a
yeah.
painful read.
Another bad any books written by Sartre or by Camus usually, or a lot of these French existentialist authors tend to be kind of bad. I have no idea why. I have no fucking idea why. They just are. They are some of the worst in terms of like these guys can really write good existentialist like philosophical works, but they cannot write for the life of them, and I hate it so much. The closest I can think of was Beckett, and Beckett's not an existentialist. He's like this weird, like minimalist, like nihilist type of like guy, and he's oxymoronic. He has existentialist themes, but he's like completely on his own. And that's another inspiration for McCarthy, even though McCarthy hates Samuel Beckett with like a passion.
I thought you.
Uh,
Yeah, I was about to say. I thought Ian said the other day that McCarthy hates Beckett. What is this?
the reason why is because a lot of people considered McCarthy kind of a plagiarist of Beckett in a lot of ways, as the same way they consider him a plagiarist of Faulkner, which he was heavily inspired by both, and that's where kind of the hatred comes from a little bit. It's because of like that accusation of being because that whole rambling sort of style he has going on with like no commas,
Uh huh.
and Beckett uses the same things. He uses like a very rambly Irish story type of way, like Malloy dies and stuff like that, very Irish story. And a lot of people think McCarthy was inspired by it, but McCarthy really wasn't inspired by that. He was inspired by, as I said already, ancient epic myths, like the Bible, like the Odyssey, the Iliad, these works that were very Homeric epics, basically. He was more inspired by that, and it got annoying for him. That and Beckett can be kind of, he's kind of, he's like Proust, and McCarthy hated Proust with an utmost passion. So that's kind of another reason why he didn't like him. Didn't really match a lot of the themes and ideas that McCarthy usually identifies with. Beckett's kind of an irreverent type of person comparatively, and has a different sort of
McCarthy's
modus operandi.
irreverent too. I mean, my God, there's a guy fucking a watermelon in this. I mean, come on.
Yeah, yeah,
If that's
but
not irreverent, I don't know what.
Yeah, but it's not the same kind of irreverence, you know. It's like South Park and Family Guy, like they're both irreverent, but they
Fair
both
enough. Yeah, okay.
hate.
I'll give you
Yeah, it's
that.
like that pretty much, you know. It's like that dynamic. Even though that's a bizarre fucking comparison.
I was about to say I didn't think we'd bring up South Park in this, but all right, I'll go with it.
It's the most sensible I can think of, really. Like these are both like they have different intentions with their irreverence, and that kind of creates conflict when you have two people with who are both geniuses, definitely. Like both are geniuses, but they're geniuses in their own different avenues, and they're not going to completely align with their philosophical inquiries, essentially.
Yeah, but going back to Suttree, Suttree was McCarthy's last big Southern novel after Child of God, Outer Dark, and Orchard Keeper. So why do you think he stopped writing in the Southern Gothic genre after this one? I think he was
Wasn't
just
profitable. That's sadly one of the main reasons. It wasn't. There was a shift. There was a change in terms of what people liked in it nowadays in prose and style genre. Outside of like Mexican Gothic, it's kind of a dead genre really nowadays. You're not really going to see any type of.
did you like
You'll see
Mexican
not
Gothic? I heard that book's pretty good.
Mexican Gothic. I have. I'm mixed on it a bit, but that's because I don't really like Mexican Gothic. Mexican Gothic, I tend to think has tends to be kind of mixed when it comes to its quality, sadly.
All right. What were you saying though about?
So pretty much it is like you'll see mainly it's just uh, I'm just being frank and upfront here. It's a dead genre essentially. You're not going to see a lot of people writing Southern Gothic anymore. You're not really going to see people writing in that type of literary field nowadays, outside of like people inspired by McCarthy or inspired by these Southern Gothic authors. It's a very much sort of a cultural milestone. It's the same way you're not really going to see like Victorian Gothic novels outside of like people inspired by them. You're not going to see like that type of cultural or meiosis really evolving or changing really because they're really based like you're not going to see like romanticism era novels outside of like Spanish romantics. That's kind of how it is nowadays. There's people inspired by it, but it's not going to have the same cultural values or shifts, and a lot of that was changing and becoming different by the time All the Pretty Horses was coming around. And that's sort of what Blood Meridian and the Border trilogy is about. It's about the death of the South, the death of Western Valley, the death of that sort of cultural milestone that we used to have. It's the linchpin that's going to go off, like pretty much, and it's the death of a cultural uh, shift there, pretty much. That's what I'm trying to explain here. It's something that was in a categorized point of era. It was about to decline in the South, and the South royalty and everything like that. That's kind of gone, and that's basically why it stopped being written, and that's why you get this. This is the farewell. I would say this is the farewell towards the South and everything it stood for, all the cowboys, all the westerns, and everything like that. That's the proper goodbye. That's what Cities on the Plain is about. And that's what sort of it's trying to capture, basically.
Well, it's funny you say that because, like I said earlier, I feel like Suttree is kind of a goodbye to the Southern Gothic genre, kind of goodbye, really, to Tennessee, really, because that's where McCarthy was from. If I remember, going back to the semi-autobiographical, if I remember right, I think that Cormac McCarthy's father was a lawyer.
He was, yeah.
I think Suttree's father is also a lawyer.
He is, yep. And that's kind of one of the things that's being commentated on because McCarthy was kind of the black sheep a bit within his family. And because he was the one that wanted to be a writer out of everyone else pretty much. And he was always kind of rebellious and had a different contrast. And McCarthy did abandon his family. He did abandon a lot of that sort of status he could have had and instead focused on, his own pursuits. And yeah, he suffered a lot for it, but it definitely like ate away and sort of like reduced him a bit towards like being this bum status. But it's basically the black sheep story. And McCarthy clearly has a lot of like resentment and sort of views for his own father. You can see that within the Orchard Keeper. You can see that within Blood Meridian. It's a common motif, the classic father archetype that he commentates on frequently throughout the entireties of his stories, really. And it's a beautiful but a very personable motif essentially throughout his work.
Yeah, there's a lot of dysfunctional families in Cormac McCarthy's world. Well, what we do see anyway, because it's kind of weird
Yeah,
with McCarthy. He's sort of he's kind of like he really likes the mythic and the surreal, even though he says he doesn't like magical realism for any reason, which that's just a crock of shit. But whatever. I mean, God, Blood Meridian is a mystical experience. Or at least I thought it was.
well, you got definitely got to understand by magical realism he means more or less like the Spanish like type of magical realism, and that tends to be pulpy stuff. He doesn't. It's not like he doesn't believe in believes in like maybe more grandiose mythical sort of like stuff, like Gnosticism or Prometheism, like a lot more human oriented stuff rather than like the whole gobbledygook about race and ghosts and Celtic phenomenon, all that type of stuff. He doesn't really believe in that type of stuff, and that's the critique really. Magical realism tends to be that type of stuff usually. And
So he probably wouldn't be reading a lot of fantasy novels. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think so. I don't think you'd be a fantasy fan, honestly. That's just my take on the.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think he
um,
is.
he's classic machismo type person, and I don't see him enjoying like Brandon Sanderson or something like
Oh
that.
God, yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, I don't see him enjoying that much.
I mean, I don't enjoy Sanderson, so I can't even imagine what he would do with that.
Probably rip on him for, or he probably just
Cringe dialogue,
what?
that cringe ass dialogue you got going on.
Yeah, but going back to Suttree.
Just this oops, back to Suttree.
um, yeah, it's very grotesque and macabre. I would say.
Oh yeah, very gothic. That's where the gothic for Southern Gothic comes into this book. But again, it's beautiful
Mm-hmm.
and the very human edge. It's just oh, it's really beautifully done. It's just fantastic. And this book tale of a guy growing up, and I think that's why more people should definitely give it a go and read up on it more.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite parts is where he's like camping out, and that guy shows up with like his chickens. I think, if I remember right. And
But
they just sit by the campfire. He's all like, "Oh, hey, what's going on?" And they're just chilling, you know.
yeah, and that scene is it's beautifully simple, and that's kind of the thing about Suttree. And I think that's kind of why it's not talked about a whole lot compared to like say The Road or Blood Meridian. It's not as grim comparatively. It's sort of it's a very beautifully simple story. It's about Sut and his life and his sort of growth and trying to understand himself because that's kind of the main thing about the book. It's him just he doesn't know himself. He doesn't know who he is as a person, and he has no real goals, no real ambitions, but he's growing, he's evolving, and he's changing slowly over time, and it's beautiful. And it's a tale of maturity and life experience and wisdom that is just it's almost impossible to really like just not live through. It's something we all go through. It's something I'm going through. It's something you're probably went through already or are going through right now. It's about just life and its tertiary experiences and the small people that you meet, the randoms, the outcasts that you befriend, and how that defines you and how that changes you and everything like that.
Um,
It's simple.
I guess the big question of Suttree is why did he leave his life? And that's something I've thought about since I've read this book, and it's kind of, I've thought about it over the many months after I've read this, and I think it's and I would say my guess is he sort of had the same epiphany that maybe King Solomon did in the Bible, where he says, "I have done all things under the sun, and in the end, all is vanity." You know. I don't know if I'm like on something, but that's kind of the vibe I got.
No, 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 no. That's a very good profundity to have there, and you
But
get
I was
sentiment
reminded
by.
of that because, like, I don't know, he seems kind of lost in his life. He doesn't
Yeah,
really know what he wants. Really, I mean, he had a son, and then his son dies, and he's all sad, and his family's all like, "Man, fuck you! You weren't even there." All that shit.
yeah, exactly. And it's very much, you can feel a lot of that basically. Unlike McCarthy, Suttree doesn't have that. A lot of self actualization. That's the entire intention of the novel, and yeah, that's sort of that King Solomon illusion there. That definitely fits there because he has a lot of the same motifs, a lot of the same sort of rise and falls right there, and it's very apocryphal. It's very just centered around self actualization and realization about yourself and your own individuality in the universe, and that can be kind of a rough experience, growth and change. But we got to go through these experiences to actually find out who we are and who we want to be in our life.
Yeah, I mean, like, Cornelia, Suttree had a good life going. He
Mm-hmm.
was comfortable, and
Yeah,
then
and McCarthy was comfortable. He could have become a lawyer, but that's not him. It wasn't the path that he wanted, and that's sort of it's a
I think that's
classic
why
sort of.
he leaves by the end as well, because he realizes like this isn't really meaningful much either. I got to do something else.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can be a bum for amount of time that you want, and you can at the same time you can be rich and comfy, but these are
Still
both
the same
meaningless.
emptiness on the inside.
Yeah, exactly. It's meaningless lives. It's meaningless struggles. It's meaningless things. So what do you want? It's about what you want. That's the whole point. That's the center. Suttree. That's the name of the novel. What does Sut want? And what Sut wants is still like kind of not answered by the end of the novel, but you can tell he just wants to be happy and independent. That's like the closest you're gonna get to like understanding what his self actualization is. That very Kierkegaard sort of like man on the mountain moment. But for me, I always just understood it as just him being happy. McCarthy had it, and you have no doubt, like he went through these same doubts, these same concerns. Like, is writing even worth it if I lose my child, my family, my wife, my whole everything, my money, my house, my existence? Is it worth it for just to be stuck to writing? And it's similar to Sut. Like, is any of this worth it? Is this the right path I should be going down? And that's sort of semi-autobiography. It's a satire on McCarthy's own self. He didn't go through everything that happened to Suttree. Like, no, not to that extent.
He
But
didn't befriend a guy who was having sex with watermelons.
no, but he was friends with like a lot of criminals back in his younger days. You can find that out in the Suttree an annotated text on JSTR. You can find that there, and you can see like every single in his teenage and childhood years. It's a really good read. Um, but basically, the whole thing right there is, is it worth it? Is it worth it all in the end? And what makes ourselves worth it? Well, it's you. You make life worth it. If nothing matters, then all that matters is what you do. Okay, that's the important thing about the novel, and that's kind of
Did you just quote Angel?
yeah, dude. Do you not know I'm a big Buffy fan, dude? I love Angel. I love Buffy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's the big thing, Sisyphus. That's what inspired Angel's character. The whole point of Angel is that if nothing matters, then all that matters is what you do. That's kind of the whole point of Suttree, and that's the whole point of this novel. And that's kind of the point of a lot of existentialism, depending on which branch you're actually going for. Um, it's the Sisyphean labor, what makes you happy and what gives you purpose in life, It's basically that. It's what gives meaning to the meaningless universe at hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, I don't know if Suttree is like consciously aware that I think he's searching for meaning. I don't know if he's consciously aware of that, but just throughout the novel and his kind of weird soul searching, he gets fucked up on alcohol and then takes a walk in the woods. There's definitely that feeling that like he's searching for some type of meaning. He's just not finding it. But
Yeah,
again, I don't know if
exactly.
he's aware enough to find that out though. He's kind
Yeah,
of an
he's sort of
asshole.
like he's he's his own Aristotle, basically. You know, he doesn't fit in with the main society. He's becoming back with nature, and he finds he doesn't fit in there either. So it's a course of just getting himself back onto the golden mean. Finding a balance to his life between his nature and the society at large, and his own individual.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's a weird thing how and then because Suttree, like if a couple times like his uncle visits him in the story, and he's like, "Oh, hey, how's everyone doing?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, they're fine. Your kid has like typhus though." He's like, "Oh fuck." And then he dies. He's like, "Damn it!" And then he goes back and he buries him. That was a really sad scene, really well written.
Sad scene, beautifully written, and it's still that classic dark comedy, that gallows humor intertwined there as well. It's about it's that's how life is really, and that's just how it is for a good
So,
old.
would you agree with the philosopher known as Nas that life's a bitch and then you die?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's kind of what this novel's saying. You're like, damn, dude, that's sad.
Yeah, man,
And like
but
his
it's
in-laws want like nothing to do with him. They're just like this fucking disgusting guy. Get away from me.
oh my god, that's why this novel is beautiful. It's beautiful, and I wish I could say more, but that would involve more of a scripted analysis personally. But I consider this probably McCarthy's S tier novel, really. And I wish I could say more, but it's its own branch basically. It's Suttree tier, and Suttree tier is right beneath Blood Meridian, right there, baby.
So, like, why do you? So, what makes Blood Meridian top this book? Because I saw your, I saw your McCarthy ranked video.
Oh yeah,
I
that
even left a
classic.
comment on it, and I'm like, all right, like, so, like, why is that the case?
So, my Meridian is better than Suttree. Is I think Blood Meridian has much better characters, and it has better, more in-depth philosophical themes. And I feel as though Blood Meridian is just a more perfect novel. Essentially, it's more poetic, more well versed, more well actualized. It's more timeless. Essentially, I feel too much like Suttree is kind of caught in being its own cultural meiosis, being sort of like a sort of farewell to Southern Gothic. And the same goes for like the rest of the novels. They each have like a bit of a flaw for them that I think holds them back from being like Blood Meridian. Blood Meridian, I feel like there's almost nothing that holds it back. It's a novel that has everything to it, and it just can't. The only two books that topped it were magnum opuses from McCarthy, and that was The Passenger and Stella Mars. And he's been writing those before he was writing Blood Meridian, and those books were leagues and bounds. Like they were on better than most of his stuff, and they were like tied still with Blood Meridian. That's how good of a book Blood Meridian is.
Yeah,
And
my
I
friend
can,
Carol, it's actually his favorite McCarthy, The Passenger, which that kind
oh
of
yeah,
shocked me. I'm gonna have to. I actually have both of them. I just haven't read them yet.
definitely give him a read. There's some of his best works. Like McCarthy, like for those to be his last two books,
I
that's
have to
just
finish The Crossing first, bro. Like, come on. It's like 20 pages a day, this book. It's really hard. Okay, I'm in college right now.
I know. You don't got free time like me, but still, it's good to like get yourself back into there and really experience those masterpieces as soon as you can because they're great. They're fantastic, and those are a good farewell from McCarthy himself because those were absolutely his masterpieces.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, Suttree kind of feels like a goodbye in a lot of ways. It's very
Yep.
it's very bittersweet in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I enjoy it so much. Anyways, I gotta start actually going soon, but it's been great talking with you, man.
Oh, well, all right, let's wrap this up then.
Yeah. Well, any final
Suttree,
thoughts from you?
what?
Any final thoughts from you? Like, what's your opinion? Where does this rank for you?
Suttree is a really good book. It's not for everyone. but it's a good one. Let me see. Where would I rank it in my McCarthy? Maybe like a 5. I don't know. I don't know if I'd put it above like All the Pretty Horses, or it's in that same range. I really liked it and it stuck with me, but yeah, I'd say that Suttree is I wouldn't say it's one of my lesser favorites, but it's definitely one that I'm gonna have to think about for a little bit. It's kind of in that mid, not really mid, but like kind of like 4 or 5.
Definitely, I can respect that. Definitely can see why you would have it there.
I know it's your number 2. You're definitely not
my number 2. Well, this is actually like my 3 or 4 favorite McCarthy book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Blood Meridian, Passenger, Stella Mars, and then Suttree right there.
All right then.
Yeah, but it's pretty much even tied. Like it's like comparing apples to oranges. It's like I love both, but I kind of prefer the orange a little bit more on this day. But then the apple has just a texture to it I can't help but enjoy. That type of thing. That was so fucking pretentious to say. My God, what a way to end there. What a way to end it off there. AJP never changing. I'm the most pretentious motherfucker on the internet. That's what the P stands for. Absolute jackass, pretentious asshole. Right here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go.
Well, you also like Buffy a Vampire Slayer, so you're not that pretentious. Like, come on.
Hey, Buffy is a masterpiece of media, period. And anyone who says otherwise is wrong. I'm always correct. AJP is always correct. You can never defy me. That's just the truth.
Well, I guess that is it for our Suttree chat. AJP, if you want to share something real quick before you go, or I don't know what social media you have, because you're kind of a hermit.
I have an Instagram. I have a YouTube channel. That stuff, and I do upload. I have a Twitter. I have a giant Napoleon book right here about texts and stuff. And oh yeah, that's right. My big old accomplishment. I wrote. These things are big. I wrote 2 books, right there. Buy my books. They're really good. I promise you. Okay, they're not a waste of time. And I guess Reed Mainlander. He's also good. Anyways, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, AJP, for joining me for talking about Suttree. This was a lot of fun. We should do this again at some point. Hopefully, you'll be on your feet by then. So good luck with that.
Yep.
All right. Well, take care, everyone. I hope you guys like this conversation, and until next time.
Until next time.